Okay, so let's talk about what I think was the best announcement at this most recent Direct. It's one that's been years in the making now on this channel, on social media, through the rumor mill, and that's Metroid Prime Remastered. But I gotta say, I think it was worth the wait, and I'm going to be going over that here today and why this game is exactly what Nintendo and Retro Studios needed. So if you guys enjoy the video, make sure you like it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. So this game did shadow drop out of nowhere. No one expected this. It shadow dropped digitally onto the eShop. The physical copy will be out in a couple of weeks, I believe on the 22nd, and it released at a price of $40, which is pretty good, to be honest, especially with the amount of work that went into this game. And it's been a little while since we've seen Retro Studios have this is still to me a big release because it's Metroid Prime, but you have to go back for like a big 3D release. You have to go back to Metroid Prime 3, I think. You could technically say Metroid Prime Trilogy, I guess, sure, but for a big 3D game from them is Metroid Prime 3. Since then, they did work on Donkey Kong Country, which were good at 2D platforming games. They did some work on Mario Kart 7. We don't really know what else they did after any of that. There were a lot of talks and rumors that they had canceled projects that were going on. We've seen some actually get out there with documentation. But most recently, it seems like they found their footing and they're back where they should be, which is working on the franchise that they made popular with Metroid Prime. So 15 and a half years later, after Metroid Prime 3 released, they dropped Metroid Prime Remastered. And, we had heard about this game. It sounded like Nintendo was even holding on to it for a while, and it's hard to dispute that since they shadow dropped it onto the eShop. Clearly, they probably could have announced it last year and been like, okay, it's out in February or something like that, right? But I see the trailer for it, and I'm like, wow, that looks really good. But, it's through stream, and that'll crush, like, some of the pictures, and it won't look as good through stream. But then I got the game, and I fire it up, and this thing might as well be a remake. I don't know why it's called Remastered. There was so much work that's gone into this game. It is a night and day difference from the GameCube. We're talking about textures, character models, sound, lighting. It's all significantly improved. Some data miners, by the way, have looked into this and the files and all this, and it appears to be using the same rude engine that Metroid Prime was built on back in the early 2000s on the GameCube, but they've just vastly upgraded it. I mean, I'm playing this game, and I go into it, I'm thinking, you know what, I'm gonna fire it up for an hour or so just to see how it looks, and I end up losing 3 or 4 hours that night to this game. It still has that pull and that atmosphere, which we'll go over here in a minute. But I went back, I was like, let me fire up the GameCube version just to see. No, it's not even close. I mean, the GameCube version for the system it was on and the time it released, don't get me wrong, it's impressive. But even through the HDMI adapter on the GameCube, I mean, this is just an incredible remaster, I guess is what we'll stick with here. But the atmosphere in the game, still unmatched. It is a title that makes you feel very alone when you're going through this world that they've built out with these different biomes and all of this. It still hits 20 years later, right? And they do a lot to remind you that you're in this suit. And that's the part that I think if you've never played Metroid Prime will catch you right away. Like, you're going to go through and there's going to be fog that gets on your visor. You're like, whoa, that's weird. And you're going to have like this weird goo get splattered on it. And it's going to constantly remind you that there is this visor just inches in front of your character's face. And like when you get to the part where the rain is coming down, it's just this atmosphere is just built so masterfully. And there are parts of the game where the detail is just our next level. When you're, for example, looking around in the rain and you see the blaster and you see the rain kind of running down it, right? If you're looking down at the ground, but then you look up and the water, the rain will run the opposite direction to go along with gravity. It's just these little touches that you might not even notice completely, but like out of the peripheral, and it just works to build up a very, very believable atmosphere and environment that you're playing in. My favorite one, though, it's still here as you would expect it to be, is if you fire a missile, like pretty close to it, you'll get the reflection of Samus's face on the visor for a split second. When that happened, back when I was first playing through this on the GameCube, like legitimately surprised me. I'd never seen anything like that. And really, I don't think I've seen that happen even since then, at least not that I can remember as vividly as this. And with all of this, the game coming in at a locked 60 frames per second, which I still believe is very important for the Metroid Prime franchise. That 60 FPS has been more or less a constant throughout. I mean, I don't know if it's been necessarily locked across the board for all releases, but it has been their overall target. So for Metroid Prime 4, I mean, Retro appears to be back. We viewed them as technical wizards back in the day. We still kind of do with what they were able to accomplish with something like Metroid Prime 3 on the Wii, but seems like they're back here, and I expect Metroid Prime 4 to be a visual showpiece for the Switch, as well as one that comes in at a fluid 60 frames per second. So I guess we'll see there. They have a few different options for control in Metroid Prime Remastered. I preferred the dual analog setup. However, if you want to play it like the original one, you can do that with a single stick setup, and then you kind of press and hold to look around and of course lean on that lock on pretty heavily. You can also use gyro controls, which that's pretty cool. It's not as accurate as pointer controls, but still pretty nice to have the option. I went through a good portion so far of the game as just dual analog stick setup. I think it works really, really well along with that lock on for this game. But here's the thing I really like about this game. Yes, the visuals, impressive. It's fluid. I believe just the overall atmosphere they've worked to build out still hits well, but the game doesn't treat you like you're an idiot. And I've noticed this more and more online, where you'll play some of these really large AAA titles, and there's a lot of work that goes into focus group testing and polling the audience more or less after they play a section of the game through testing, and just how do you feel? Where did you get stuck? That sort of thing. And then at those times, maybe your companion, after 2 minutes, is like, you should try throwing something there. You should stand here. You should do this. And I see people complain about this online. Metroid Prime is the polar opposite. There's very little dialogue, if at all, in the game, right? Like, you can turn on the narration and stuff. You can scan stuff, obviously, and it'll at least give you hints and kind of point you in the right direction, but doesn't just jut out in front of you like that meme with Woody and Sora in Toy Story, and he's like, get out of the way, I'm going to show you how to do this. Metroid Prime is very subtle about it. A lot of it goes through the environment, trying to lead you by showing you things like a half pipe. Oh, what do you do with a half pipe? Well, I have this morph ball, and then I can do like this boost. Maybe I can use the momentum to jump up to that spot that I can't get to otherwise. Oh, wait, yeah, that did it. And now there's a door, and then I go through there, and I get it. Again, very subtle, but it uses the environment masterfully to do it, so you actually feel like you figured stuff out rather than have the companion type A tell you which way to go. But above all else, this is what Nintendo and Retro Studios absolutely needed. I was hoping when this eventually came out, because it's been one of the worst kept secret for years now, that it would legitimately impress people and it would work to reintroduce everyone to the Metroid Prime franchise once again. We've seen the struggles of Metroid Prime 4. The confidence level is low on this game right now. I mean, when they showed up, it was at the beginning of 2019 to tell us that Metroid Prime 4 was being rebooted. Tell me you didn't think we were going into that with them telling us it was going to be canceled. Like, I thought that as they were going through it, it really felt like they were just going to say, hey, it's just, we can't get it to work, we're canceling the project. Instead, they handed it off to Retro Studios. And there's been a lot of speculation as to how that came about. And something that I have thought and speculated on is maybe Nintendo saw how this Metroid Prime Remastered game was coming along, and they saw what Retro was able to do with their Root engine as they worked to build it out and update it. And they're like, wow, this looks and runs better than what us internally and Bandai Namco have been able to do, so you guys do it, and we'll work to release Metroid Prime Remastered as we get closer to the eventual reveal of Metroid Prime 4. So even though this is a rebuild of an existing game from 20 years ago, it feels like Retro Studios just kicked the door in to remind us what they're capable of, and I would say bring a lot of confidence back to the Metroid fan base. And I think that's something that they've desperately needed at this point, especially for the Metroid Prime side of things, because Metroid Dread for 2D Metroid games is great, But Metroid Prime is something that feels like it's been on the back burner for a while, and it feels like we came this close to not getting Metroid Prime 4. So I am very happy that Metroid Prime Remastered came out the way it did. I'm also very happy for people who have never played this game. Yes, it's absolutely worth $40. Yes, you should be buying this game, and you should be checking out what I still think is one of the greatest games ever made. And you know what? Nintendo knew which generation to go back to reinvigorate the fan base. I mean, they can't go back to Nintendo 64 for Metroid, obviously. Imagine the N64 over the GameCube. Well, I don't see the Nintendo 64 showing up with a title that's scoring in the 90s on Metacritic, even 20 years later. But let me know what you guys think about all of this down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.